Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Marketing and Mindset with your host, Matt Miller. And today, I'm going to be going over a special episode all about mindset. So I got a couple questions. What do you think it takes to achieve more external success, more results, and more achievement? Is it working harder? Is it working faster? Is it working smarter? Is it being more productive? What truly is it that allows us to get to certain levels of success that we didn't even think was possible? Well, I'm here to tell you guys that the level to which we succeed and achieve will always be that level to which we think we're capable of or that we think we're worthy of. To give an analogy, if you think about your room and how you have a thermostat, and let's say that thermostat's set to 70 degrees. Currently in the room, if the heat's on and it's really 60 degrees, what it's going to do is it's going to slowly build up until it hits that threshold of 70 degrees, and then it's going to top out and it's going to stay there. The same thing happens if it's above 70 degrees. Sooner or later, it's going to fall back down to that 70 degrees. So if you think about your own life, you're going to have that certain level that you believe you're capable of, that you believe that if you top out at, that's giving it your all. So what we have to do is we have to think about how we can increase our self-worth and what we're capable of so we can increase that line so that we don't top out at 70 degrees, but instead we go to 100 degrees. And there's a quote that I love by Jim Rohn, and it says, "Your level of success will rarely outweigh your level of personal development because your level of success is what you attract by the person you become." I'm going to say that again. Your level of success will rarely exceed your level of personal development because success is what you attract by the person you become. So what we have to do, instead of thinking about how we can work smarter, harder, and faster, we have to increase our level of personal development. So this podcast episode is all about personal development. So we're going to discuss the 3 things beyond the basics that I believe that everybody should be doing on a daily basis to help make our day the best possible. Number 2, I'm going to talk about the 3 things that I believe are accelerators to personal development. And then number 3, I'm going to talk about what I know about personal development to be true, what I can relate to my own life. So now that we've discussed that the secret to achievement is personal development, I want to talk about the 3 things that we should be doing on a daily basis to set ourselves up for success. And the more I read, the more I learned, it all came down to really these 3 things. Sure, we have basic essentials and basic necessities like eating, drinking, sleeping, all that kind of stuff. But what I want to talk about is the next level. And something that we should be doing on a daily basis, number 1, is we should always learn something new. Whether it's reading a book, listening to a podcast, or taking some kind of course, or maybe it's just going to work and learning a new skill or having a new conversation. Every single day we should be learning something new and we should be making progress. There shouldn't be a day where we don't learn something new, because the scary part is a day could turn into a week, which can turn into a month, which can turn into a year. And all of a sudden we look back on that year and we notice that we haven't made progress like we want to. So number 1 is that everybody should be learning something new every single day. Number 2 is we need to change our physical state. So we need to get some kind of exercise every single day. And there's so many benefits to exercise. We can just do a quick walk, we can do a run, we can lift, or maybe it's just 5 or 10 minutes of stretching out every day or doing some kind of yoga practice. Whatever it is, we need to get our heart rate moving, we need to get our body moving, and we need to be able to get some kind of exercise every single day just because of all the health benefits. And what it's going to do is it's going to give us a lot more energy throughout the day as well. So when we work on our physical state, we're also incorporating energy into our days. So number 1 is learn something new. Number 2 is getting exercise. And number 3 is I think that everybody should have some kind of silence. So whether that's just taking 10 minutes out of our days just to relax, maybe it's taking a nap, maybe it's doing a meditation practice, or it's reflecting on the day and thinking about the wins that we had, or maybe the struggles that we faced. But every single day should have some kind of practice where we're thinking about what went well and maybe what didn't go well. And if we can incorporate those three things, learning something new, getting some kind of exercise, and also having some kind of silence practice, then I think we're going to set ourselves up for success. And that third topic of silence, it isn't so obvious. So a question for you guys, how many of you are taking time out of your day just to relax, to calm down, and just to reflect on the day? So I think that's super important. So next, I want to talk about the three things that I believe accelerates personal development. So number one, if we can find time to go to certain events, it's going to be beneficial. We're putting ourselves out there in potentially an uncomfortable position, which is going to be good for us. If we can go to a live event, maybe it's a virtual event, but if we get the chance to meet somebody and go and put ourselves in those situations, it's always going to prove to be beneficial. Number two is going out and walking in nature. And this is something that I've learned to practice, especially last summer. I started going on a lot of runs in a lot of metro parks. And when we're able to reconnect with nature, it seems like there's always some kind of peace that comes with it. So it's something that I've started to enjoy. And there's also a ton of health benefits. According to Medical News Today, sunlight is essential for human health and well-being. The health benefits of sunlight include generating the production of vitamin D, supporting bone health, lowering blood pressure, preventing disease, and promoting good mental health. That's also very important. And lastly is the power of perspective. So in our day-to-day activities, there's going to be a lot of things that we can control, and there's going to be a lot of things that we can't control. But, however, we can always choose how we react to a certain situation. So if we're on our way to work and we get in a fender bender or we get in some kind of collision, sure, that's a horrible thing, but we always have the opportunity to take meaning out of that action. So if we decide to perceive it as something that is just a minor roadblock in our day, and we continue to go on and win the rest of the day, that's ultimately going to be the best case scenario. Instead of taking that situation and playing a victim, having it ruin the rest of our day, we can choose to perceive it in a way that actually brings a positive out of it. And that goes for any situation from being a little minor inconvenience all the way up to something that's drastically bad. So I want to recap by talking about the three personal development accelerators, which include events, nature, with also the benefits of sunlight, and also having the power of perspective. And lastly, I want to share what I know to be true about personal development. So growing up, I was always very competitive. I always wanted external success. I always wanted results and achievement. And about 3 years ago, I graduated school. And what this did for me is it allowed me to have more of a fresh start. And I started working at my corporate job, and something that I struggled with at the time in this season in my life is that I wasn't very good financially speaking. I had a lot of money I had to pay off. I didn't know how to save or how to invest. So what I did was I looked up a podcast and I found the Personal Finance Podcast by Andrew Giancola. And what this podcast did is it allowed me to really understand the basics of finance. But also what I ended up doing was I listened to a podcast and it provided so much value and it was free. So what I did was every time I went to the gym, I would pull it on this podcast. And then instead of listening to music, I'll take this podcast and I would felt like I learned something while I was at the gym working out. So it was a win-win. And then what I ended up doing was not only listening to one episode every time I was at the gym, but every opportunity that I got, I started listening to these podcasts. And eventually I started doing it so much that it became like second nature. And I went through hundreds of episodes of the podcast and ended up going through the whole first few seasons. And I went from start to finish. And by the time I finished all those podcast episodes, I felt like I was in a position where I could even teach somebody about personal finance. So it was such an important learning tool for me. And that's part of the reason why I'm starting this podcast. So then after I had a little bit of success with now understanding how to save my money, how to invest my money, which I do index funds now, and I started seeing myself save money, and then looking at compounding interest and seeing my portfolios grow, I saw some success. But I wanted this in all areas of my life. So I just didn't want it with money. So what I started doing was reading different books on different topics. And I had a goal to read a book a week. And I've done that for the last 2 years. So I started reading books, starting listening to all these different types of podcasts. And I really discovered a lot of different topics that I was really passionate about. And then I ended up reading a book where the whole premise of the book was based upon what do the most successful people in the world do on a daily basis. And this is something that really struck home with me. I wanted the success, so I started looking and reading this book, and there was so much research that went into it. And the book said that each successful person, for the most part, practices the same 6 things every single day. So after I heard this, I made it a challenge to myself to practice these 6 things every single day. And what the 6 things were is, number 1, silence. So some kind of meditation practice, some kind of breath work, some type of meditation, or some type of prayer. And everybody seemed to have some time set apart in the day to do some silence. The next thing was affirmations, saying that everybody that was successful had a practice where they would affirm what they believed in. Maybe they wrote down their goals, and then every morning they'd look at that goal list, and it would help them center themselves for the rest of the day. The third thing was visualizing. And what visualizing is doing is basically looking at the best version of yourself out in the future and imagining yourself being that successful person. Because if you're able to put yourself in that state in the future, you're more likely to achieve that. The next thing was some kind of exercise practice. Whether it was 5 or 10 minutes of doing push-ups or going to the gym every single day, there was some level of exercise. Then the next thing was reading. So everybody seemed to do some sort of reading practice. And then lastly was scribing or writing or journaling. That it seemed like almost everybody on a daily basis was doing some level of reflection by writing down in a journal. So the book revolved around the 6 practices of silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing, or savers. Silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Those 6 things. And the book is called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And this is the book that really transformed my level and my perception of personal development. So after I read this book, I wanted to be successful. So I started doing all 6 of these things every single day. And I actually developed a morning routine where the first half hour, the first 45 minutes, first hour of the day, I was just doing these 6 things, knocked them all out, and then I would set a streak. And I continued to do this day in, day out, and I started seeing a lot of the benefits in terms of my personal development growing and increasing. And what's super important is I go back to the quote where Jim Rohn says, your level of success will rarely exceed your level of personal development, because success is who we attract by the person we're becoming. So when I noticed that I had to increase my personal development to increase my level of success, I was all in and I was all sold. And another thing that this did for me, it helped me set up a morning routine, and I ended up waking up early. So question, how many of you wake up early? And is waking up early an indicator to being successful? I don't think it necessarily is, but according to CNBC, nearly 2/3 of successful CEOs say that they wake up at 6 a.m. or earlier each day. So I personally wake up early because I notice that it helps me set myself up for success for the rest of the day. So now that we've covered my story on discovering personal development, I want to summarize everything that we've covered. So if we want to increase our level of success, achievements, results, we don't need to focus on working harder or becoming more productive. We need to focus on what's holding us back by increasing our awareness and increasing our level of personal development. And the three things that we must do on a daily basis beyond the basics and necessities is number one, learn something new. Number two, exercise. And number three, have some practice of silence. And the three things that I've noticed that accelerates personal development is number one, going to certain events. Number two, immersing ourselves in nature. And number three, having the power of perspective. And lastly, what I know to be true about personal development is I started reading a book a week and I started devouring podcasts, and that had a profound impact on what I'm doing and what I'm learning on a daily basis. And not only that, but I read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and it preached the savers: silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. And through all of that, I noticed that it increased my level of personal development. And what's really important is if you start a habit, like for me, it was practicing these 6 things. I started building momentum and I started building this compounding effect that increased all areas of my life, and not only the money side that I originally wanted after I graduated school. So I hope you guys took something out of this episode, and I just want to preach that we all are so busy, we all have so much going on, and that we're always striving to be achievers and to get more out of our day-to-day activities. But sometimes we need to take a step back and really focus on what's holding us back. And in this case, it's personal development. So that's why I want to stress the importance of it. So thank you guys for listening, and we're going to be back with another episode shortly. So thank you.